Hello, my name is Stacey Marie, and today I have a great guest that I'll be interviewing. So come inside my world with me. With me today is the message master, Glenn Rudin. He is a branding and pitching coach. As a business coach, Glenn is helping business owners perfect their message, pitch, and branding. For more information, go to alwaysbeencreative.com. Again, it's alwaysbeencreative.com. Thank you, Glenn, for being in my world today.
Thank you, Stacey. It's a pleasure to be in your world, and it is a novel and new way to meet you and get in touch with the metaverse. So thank you for giving me this opportunity.
You're welcome. It's very different. It's a different world than what I've been used to in the past. So it's something that is for the future.
Absolutely. And listen, as somebody that coaches people, it's always important to be in touch with the very latest trends and things that are happening in the world. And so when I get an opportunity to work with a marketing pioneer like you, it's a great opportunity to do that.
Oh, well, I want to know, how long have you been a coach?
Well, I've been a coach for the last 7 or 8 years now, on top of a long career in product development. But over the last 7 or 8 years in particular, I've taken a big focus on coaching individuals because I found that most people are really very poorly prepared in the world with their appearance, with their pitch, with their messaging. And as a culture that struggles with public speaking and public appearance, there is an opportunity for somebody like me to really help a lot of people. And so, about 7 or 8 years ago, this is something that I started to dig into on a much deeper basis.
Now, when you were in product development, what did you do in that side of product development?
Well, I was involved really in all aspects of product development, from the inception of a product, somebody coming to me, or my own self coming up with a new idea or concept, figuring out how that was going to be manufactured, and if there was an actual vibrant market for it in the United States, for the most part in the consumer goods area. And then I would endeavor to source that product, find people that could manufacture it for me, for the most part overseas in China. And then I would go about manufacturing it, importing it, and then getting on the selling front of that, selling to big retailers like Walmart and Target and CVS and Walgreens, or on the custom side for companies like the Disney company and or Universal Studios, the NBA, and again, even for my own company as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. All the things that you did. I wanted to ask you, what are the key elements to a pitch? Because a lot of business owners, whether when they begin or they're maybe 2, 3 years into their business and they need to go through that new, I guess, that new chapter of their business or take it to the next level. What are the elements for a perfect pitch?
Well, I have my own unique style, Stacey, for coaching people in businesses, small business owners, on how to do their elevator pitch. Now, every great elevator pitch has a few common elements to it. Number one is a strong introduction. Number two is a unique selling proposition. And number three is engagement, getting the audience engaged in what you're speaking about. And we can go back over each one of these individually so that the people who are listening to this or reading about it have a really good idea about what I'm speaking about. Now, most people don't realize that your elevator pitch actually starts before you even begin speaking. And that's because human beings judge one another on their appearance. And if your appearance doesn't match the business sector that you're in other words, if you're not dressed the part when you're doing your pitch, if your posture does not exude confidence in what you're doing, if you don't have positive energy, and you don't have a good speaking voice in terms of taking a deep breath so that people can really understand you, then before you even do your pitch, people will start to become turned off. So before you even start pitching, you've got to be ready to pitch and you've got to appear ready to pitch for people, or there's a good chance that they're not going to listen to you. And so if we start there and we say, yes, okay, I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to dress the part for the industry that I'm in. I'm going to look professional. Then the next step is, what can you say at the very top of your elevator pitch that will get somebody interested in hearing more? That's the introduction. That's the first 10 or 15 words, a sentence or two that will tell the audience something that they want to hear and that they will want to hear more about. And the
Well,
way I coach this with my, sorry, go
no,
ahead.
it's okay. I wanted to mention about appearance because I mentioned this in my upcoming book. Is in the 90s, I got invited to an event, and I grew up in Southern California. So this event happened right at the beach, right? And I actually dressed, I dressed over, because I was used to, when I was going to events, wearing suits or just dressing a little bit, well, I would say very professional. And when I walked into these events, everyone was dressed casual. They had their sundresses on with their flip flops, and they're mingling, and they looked at me as if I was in a different category than they are at, you know, in their business. They thought that I was more successful than them. So, with that in mind, they didn't take out the time to talk to me. It was very hard for me because it was very emotional for me because, Glenn, I felt like an oddball out. And I left there in tears going, why didn't anybody talk to me? And it's interesting you say about appearance because you're right. You have to dress apart to whatever you're doing. You have to dress appropriately. And I was overly dressed, but I did find out a year later when I met up with the lady. She got to know me better, and she was at the event, and she was like, we are so sorry. We really thought that you were beyond more successful than us, and we weren't even there yet. And I'm like, no, I just dress, for success. And everywhere I go in networking events, and how appearance, people don't understand that is the first thing that people see, and they judge you is on what you wear.
Yeah, well, listen, it's a really, really interesting story, and there's some sadness to it as well, that the people who you were meeting with felt in that particular situation intimidated by the way you dressed. And what I'd say to you, if I were coaching you at the time, was that this was really not about you. This was really about the people that you were meeting with there. They were
Yes,
the ones that felt insecure. You had nothing to feel insecure about. And so,
absolutely.
listen, very often we have got to believe enough in ourselves to say, I'm going to hold my head up high. I'm going to hold my shoulders back, and I'm going to execute what I intended to execute when I showed up at this meeting. Now, you have no control over whether or not the people who you are meeting with are going to be less than professional than you. And of course, every meeting has its own personality to it. And being somebody new to it, you wouldn't have understood that maybe because this group met at the beach, they'd all given themselves permission to dress more casually than somebody who was new to the group and showing up really to do business and to make a strong impression. And so the problem with that whole scenario was the group and not with you. And sometimes when you get involved in certain groups, you will find out that they are clicky, that they have their own insider language, and they sometimes do make it difficult for somebody new like you to become a part of it and to join in. And I know it's really difficult, and I can really feel and empathize with the pain that you left there with. But the truth is, you were doing the right thing. They were doing the wrong thing. And in a sense, it almost reminds me of of the immaturity of a high school group getting together, where people are not yet realizing the power of networking and meeting new people, and that everybody has a slightly different way of doing it. But it's a great story. And it just gives everybody who's listening the idea to say, listen, don't take these things personally, because in that particular case, you were in the right, you were doing the right thing. And the group that you were meeting with there did not do justice to you for the effort that you were making.
Well, it's interesting you bring this up because I was in my mid 20s and starting to get out into the business world at the time for the first time because I was raising two kids and was married at the time. And I am still married, but I went to my dad for advice, and his advice was you always dress to the T. You always dress for success in whatever event you go to. And so I listened to his advice and I went. And yeah, it was an interesting learning experience for me, but I took it and pretty much just moved on to the next event at the time.
Right. Well, and that's really what you have to do. We can't take these things personally because they are not about us. That was purely about the people who organized that meeting and did not do a great job of making somebody new feel welcome. Now, maybe had you gone back to a second or third meeting, maybe you wouldn't have gone to the level of sundress and flip-flop, which for me is really unprofessional for a business
Yes.
meeting. If the business group was saying, listen, we're going to meet on Saturday and we're going to be super casual because we are going to go down to the beach and we're going to make it a super fun breakout of the business for this Saturday meeting, that would be a different story. And then it would be potentially a different dress code. Maybe you wouldn't show up to a dress code like that wearing a suit. Maybe you would show up in a polo shirt and in more comfortable pants and shoes. But I don't know that you would ever go to the level, to me, of flip flops, shorts, and a sundress, because for me, that sounds like vacation. And unless the group was going on vacation together and they were still trying to do business, again, I would say I would agree with your father. You want to dress at a higher level or equal or above, but you never really want to dress down to a level that says, hey, don't take me seriously. I'm not here to do business. I'm just here to have a good time. So it's an unfortunate story, but a great learning experience for everybody else that is listening.
Well, and I love the fact that you said about, if they dress down, you're presenting as saying, don't take me seriously in what I'm doing in my career. And a lot of people don't realize that. I want to move on. You said the first one was appearance. What's the next one?
Well, the next one is your introduction statement that you make at the top of your elevator pitch, which gets people either interested or not interested in the rest of what you're going to say. And when people are not prepared for their elevator pitch, normally what they'll do out of nervousness is they'll take something really simple about themselves that's really irrelevant to their pitch. And they'll say something like, hi, I'm Glenn Rudin. My company is called Always Been Creative. I live in Long Island, New York. Now, all three of those things are true, but all three of those things have absolutely nothing to do with what I do as a business person or as a coach. And so now I've gone ahead and I've taken my valuable introduction time when people are looking at me and saying, okay, this guy's about to speak. What's he all about? And I've now filled the beginning of my pitch with all kinds of information they don't need, because they don't need to know my name. They don't need to know the name of my business. They're not buying it. They don't need to know where I live. They're not coming to visit me. And yet I've used the first part of my pitch in that example, and I've told them nothing about what my business is all about. And it's a big mistake most people make, and it's a lazy way to do an elevator pitch, because you know who you are, you know where you're from, you know your company's name. You haven't done any preparation, but you'll say that just to fill up some of the time that you have to speak publicly because you're nervous about what people are going to think of you. So I always say to people when I coach them on elevator pitch, leave all of those things out of it. If your pitch is interesting enough, people will approach you at the end of the meeting after your pitch at the appropriate time, and they will say, something you said there was interesting. I'd like to hear more. So how do you really do a great introduction, Stacey? I coach my students to use either a question or a fact about the business that they're in. So an example for me would be, Stacey, did you know that 90% of the people I come in contact with struggle with their elevator pitch, struggle with their appearance, struggle with their branding? So, right off the bat, I've now said something that includes just about everybody who's listening. And so the intent there is to get people to say, wait a minute, I think this guy might be speaking to me because I struggle with those things. I'm going to lean in and I'm going to listen a little bit closer. The other thing I could do there is, instead of asking the question, saying, Stacey, did you know? And asking it in the form of a question, is I could say, Stacey, 90% of the people I come in contact with struggle with their message. They struggle with their brand. They struggle with their appearance. They struggle with what to say to get attention for their business. So now, again, I've stated a fact that includes just about anybody that is listening. And I will say that in the time that I've been doing this over the last 7 years, there's a handful of people that will do an elevator pitch that is really well done and really resonates. The rest, 90%, are just not good at it. So if I start with that really strong introduction with a fact or a question that now has you listening and wanting to hear more, because I've been compelling, I'm trying to make it interesting, I'm enthusiastic about it, I'm speaking as an authority on it, now you're leaning in and you're thinking to yourself, wow, I'm in that group. What's coming next? And what's coming next becomes your unique selling proposition, or USP. A lot of us have heard that. What's your USP? What's your unique selling proposition? So for me, I would follow up that introduction statement and say, if you're in that group, I've got great news for you. I've got proven methods of helping you develop a pitch that will resonate, that you can be confident in. And it's all based on working with me one-on-one and following the way I teach a pitch. So now somebody has heard that there's a problem or there's an issue for most people that do a pitch. They're probably considering that they're in that group. And I've told them not to worry. There's a way to get around that. I can help them. I've got proven methods. So this is what's unique about me. I'm one of the few people that actually helps people perfect their elevator pitch. There's not that many people out in the world that do that. And then, of course, the last part of that, now that I've got you engaged in that, is how to follow up with me. If that's of interest to you, you can get in touch with me a number of different ways. You can email me. We can exchange business cards here. You can find me on platforms like LinkedIn and things like that. So now, in my 30-second and maybe sometimes 35 seconds, maybe, I've now introduced an issue that there's a really good chance affects you. I've told you not to worry about it, that I've got unique solutions that will help you with it. And now I've told you where to get in touch with me for more information. And still, I haven't said the name of my company. I haven't said really who I am. I haven't told you where I'm from, because all of those things will now come into play when someone is interested enough and they will say, hey, are you local here in Long Island? Could we meet face to face? Or how do I get in touch with you? What platform is it easiest to reach you on? And let me just throw this in also, in case you don't ask. An effective pitch doesn't mean that everybody on your Zoom call or everybody at your in-person meeting, 25, 30 people at a Chamber of Commerce meeting, are going to line up after the meeting to want to meet with you. But if a half a dozen people want your business card, or a half a dozen people say, hey, can I speak to you after the meeting? You have done, in my judgment, an outstanding job with your elevator pitch, because you've proven that the way you said it will get people interested. And then it just becomes a numbers game. How many different places can you go? How many different meetings can you attend where you're going to now do that new and improved pitch and begin to add new possible connections who are interested in you to coach them or interested in you as somebody that might help somebody else they know. Because remember, not every single person, not every single person that you are speaking to that hears your voice is your potential customer. But every single person that's listening to you knows somebody who is your potential customer. And that's why it's so important for your pitch to be crystal clear.
Well, I wanted to go back to the pitch because you meet somebody for the first time at a networking event. And I do want to say this. I love going to networking events where I know zero, I don't know anybody. And the reason why that is because if I know somebody, I'll get caught up catching up on what's been going on. And that takes time away from meeting people that I've never met before. But my thing is, for me, when I go to events, when I meet somebody, I love giving them the platform to tell me about what they do before I tell them what I do, because in that conversation, as I get to know them and listening to them, I can know right away, or a little bit know, if there's something or a need that they need that I can provide. And if I can't provide it, then I know somebody that can provide it. Um, and so in asking this, should people be doing that, like what I'm doing?
Well, listen, it's always great to be a great listener. Everybody wants to feel like what they're saying, that somebody wants to hear it and that somebody is willing to listen to them. The key about that is if you're going to give somebody the initial opening to start the conversation,
Hmm.
you just have to make sure that you are prepared to say something like, "That's really interesting. Let me tell you a little bit about more about what I do." Because you can get into conversations with certain people who are not very good at understanding that a great networking meeting is 55 45, 45 55 in terms of percents. It might not be completely equal, but both of us do need the opportunity to speak a bit about what we do and how we can help one another. But there's certainly nothing wrong with letting somebody else go first. And I do love the idea of listening to somebody first so you can potentially tailor or cater what you do a little bit more to what they might be looking for. So it's a good strategy to see what somebody is going to say first and how well they are prepared at what they do. But the last thing in the world I want for you or anybody else that's hearing my voice now to do is give up the opportunity to speak about themselves also, because that's critical. You're going to these meetings and you also want people to know the value that you can provide. So while you may want to give somebody else the opportunity to speak first, I do want to make sure that you also get the opportunity to fit your pitch in there so somebody understands what you do as well.
Oh, that's great. That is really great advice. I wanted to ask you, when is the right time to do follow up? For me, I if I go to an evening mixer and I get home, I actually usually send out the email right away thanking them and bring up something like, it was great talking with you tonight. And I love our conversation about XYZ. And I usually, if I can't do it right then that evening, I do it at least by noontime the next morning. Is that how fast you should do the follow up email?
Yes, it's a great question, and it's a mistake that people make also to just go out and aimlessly collect cards and then leave them sitting on your desk, in your purse, in your briefcase when you get home is a huge mistake. Because listen, we are all human beings, and every day we are besieged with all kinds of messages, and you want to make sure that while the impression you made with somebody is still fresh in their mind, that you do exactly what you said, that you take the time to follow up, to thank them, to see if you can't arrange a further connection meeting, because for me, that's really what it's all about. That first meeting when someone had an interest in you is wonderful, but you do really need to follow that up with a phone conversation, a Zoom conversation, or if you're in a local market together, getting together and meeting for a cup of coffee for a half hour to really solidify who you are with each other in an environment outside of the one that you met in, which does two things. One, it does establish a one on one connection where you can really get to know somebody on a little bit more of a personal basis. But two, it also shows great effort on both people's part, that there's a meaning to building a business relationship with one another. And I will say this, in my judgment, those business cards have a shelf life. And to me, the maximum, very maximum that shelf life would be is 72 hours. If you've not written back to somebody within 3 days, then to me, you've basically lost the momentum you created by going to a meeting and meeting them in the first place. And I love what you do. I love being the first person to get on the computer, to get on the phone, and show that you really want to establish a relationship with this person. So to do it within 12 hours or 24 hours is optimum, no question. So it's a great job by you.
Oh, thank you. What do we do when you email somebody after the event and they email you back and they just don't seem interested in getting together? Do you like turn around and wait 6 months, 3 months to see how they're doing? Or what do you suggest?
Well, listen, whether it's you or anybody else who's listening or reading about this, you should have some kind of active email marketing campaign going on. And one of the other things that I would be doing beside one on one calls would be adding that person's name to your email distribution list so that even when you're not calling them directly in the event that they don't answer your phone call, they don't respond, they should be getting something of value from you, whether it's your newsletter, whether it's something else that goes on a regular basis that's not salesy, but is informational. So they feel more connected to what you're doing and they get a sense for how you operate your business in general. So I think it's really, really important to give that call a couple of attempts. You don't want to just give up because someone didn't get back to you after the first call. Maybe 3 days, maybe a week later, you give it another couple of tries. And in the meantime, add that name to your email marketing list. If you don't have one, you should, and that's something that you should be actively developing. Maybe you've got social media campaigns. Maybe this is somebody who's on LinkedIn that you could be reaching out and further establishing your relationship together there. There's so many facets to building a great new connection. But the last thing in the world you want to do is just let it die because you've made one phone call and the person didn't get back to you. Because let's face it, we are all day long besieged with messages from people we know, important things that we have to do, plus all of the junk mail that comes in. And so we need to give some grace to the people who are getting new messages from us. And that's why we need to give it a chance to blossom and grow. And at the same time, not take personal when someone doesn't get right back to us. But if you've got an active email campaign, if you've got a social media marketing campaign, this person could very well be on Twitter. They could be on Instagram. They could be on LinkedIn. There are a number of ways to reach them there and also thank them for making a connection with you and then furthering the relationships that way.
Well, and I wanted to go and dive into branding because sometimes a business owner's all over the place in branding and it's mixed messages and their audience really don't get what they do. Let's tell me like how does one brand or the best way to brand your business?
Well, look, there's a lot of different ways to brand your business. I was just doing some reviewing some different ways that you can do brand storytelling. There's about 14 or 15 different ways that you can do this, and it's impossible to give those all to you in the space of the interview that we're doing here.
Right?
But you need to understand the kind of business that you do and why that business appeals to people. And then there is a particular type of brand storytelling that possibly works for your business. As a good example, I'm just putting together a course on this now. So there is audience based brand storytelling. And a great example of this would be Weight Watchers. which is for years and years, has been one of the market leaders in weight loss programs for its customers. Well, it uses its customers in its advertising because naturally it wants to show off how much weight each of its customers can lose if they sign up for the program. So that's audience based storytelling where I'm actually going to use members of my consuming audience who are now going to be featured in my ads in an effort to appeal to people who are watching the advertisements. There's a lot of different, there's another 13 brand storytelling methods that you could possibly use for your company. And they range from mission based, where your company is on a mission to do something, and you'll constantly remind people of that mission in your marketing. There is data driven storytelling where you will use facts and statistics about your particular brand and how effective it is, and that will become your branding. So you really have to know what, in particular, your product is focused on and how it will resonate with your audience. And that's really how you start going about building your brand. Further, you would go ahead and think of adjectives that you would go ahead and use to describe your brand. What about it is unique? What adjectives would you use to describe it so that when people hear about it and they think about it, those are the adjectives that come to mind for them, right? If you're going to use Whole Foods supermarket, right? Just the name Whole Foods connotes an image of whether it's true or not, of organic, of well made, of healthy choices, of a different kind of consumer that's concerned about the environment and things like that. So there's a lot of different ways to build your brand, and you have to know for your product, how do you want it to appeal to the audience that you want it to appeal to?
Is it best for business owners to maybe journal, write down maybe like 3 or 5 things that they see that is important within their business that needs to get out there? Maybe that's a starting point of branding.
Well, the most important starting point, Stacey, is to know your why. WHY.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you do what you do? What is the reason for it? Now, naturally, everybody would say, well, I want to make money. And we understand that. Everybody wants to make money with their businesses. Even not for profit companies want to make money. So they've got more money that goes into their particular charity. But why do you do what you do? Is there a problem that you are solving for people? Is there something that, that your food tastes great and it's healthy and you want people to have healthy alternatives? Are you an exercise brand that motivates people to go out and get in shape? Why do you do what you do? What was the reason that you developed your brand in the first place? What was the inspiration behind you getting up one morning and saying, I've got it. This is what I'm going to do. What was that? Let's boil that down into the essence of why your business even exists. And that's going to be the first place that you want to start with figuring out what your brand is all about.
Is there a how as well? Isn't there like
Well, the
there's the
how
why,
is,
the how, and the
yeah. I don't think so. It's not really so much the who, what, where, when, why
okay.
kind of scenario. In other words, the how. The how is, how does your brand do what it does
Mm-hmm.
in terms of what that is? But that's not as related to the mission statement in terms of why the business even exists. It's not how it exists, but why it exists. That's the most important question, because if you don't have a why, then we have to wonder, what in the world are you doing? If you're just putting out another cola drink, don't we have Coke? Don't we have Pepsi? Don't we have alternates for Coke based drinks like Sprite, like Dr. Pepper? Don't we have sports drinks and energy drinks? So if you're going to come out with a new cola, why? What is going to be special and unique about your cola that will make us think, listen, I've been drinking Coca-Cola for my entire life. So why do I want to change to a new one? What is different about the one you're doing? And I don't know what the answer to that would be, but if you were endeavoring to have a new Coke drink, you'd have to come up with a really good reason for why it exists, because we already have loyalties to Coke and to Pepsi. And so for us to want to try a new one, you have to have a very good why did you develop this in the first place?
Oh, that's such great information to really think about when it comes to branding. I want to switch to talk about Clubhouse because you're on there a lot, and tell us about Breakfast with Champions.
Well, Breakfast with Champions is a show that at the inception of Clubhouse, and if you've got people who are listening or reading, Clubhouse is an audio only app that was developed about 3 years ago and really came into its height during the worldwide pandemic, where when people were stuck at home. It's an application that works on a phone or a tablet, which is a voice only application. There's no imagery or anything. It's just basically people being on group or party phone calls, and they're organized by topic. Now, the Breakfast with Champions is the brainchild of a renowned speaker named Glenn Lundy, who formed that club on Clubhouse about 3 years ago. And it's on the Clubhouse app daily, which anybody who's got an Android or an Apple phone can download the Clubhouse app. And then you can get on there and you can listen to experts or just people speak about and opine about all kinds of topics. And I just happen to be part of the Breakfast with Champions show, which runs every day from 5 a.m. Till 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And every Friday, I've got a show that I do on there from 7:30 to 8 a.m., where I speak about all different topics related to branding and messaging and pitch.
Well, I see that you have the power of persistence. Appreciate the journey show. And, that is one thing that a lot of entrepreneurs or business owners is they don't have a lot of persistence. They give up too easily because it's not going the direction or not maybe they're not succeeding at a pace that they want. And boy, we do need more persistence.
Well, sure. Look, it's easy to a couple things. It's easy to get bored or disheartened when things are not going well. And what I will say is you have to be really, really careful about the whole comparison issue when you go into these social media places and you find people have so many followers or they get so many likes when they do a post and things like that. We all really have to get much more comfortable living in our own space and making the greatest effort that we can make, and understanding literally that these things don't happen overnight. That if you've got a good product or a good message or a good service, it takes time for people to become aware of it. And you can't get bored with the way you disseminate the information about what you do.
So, Glenn, how does a business owner entrepreneur keep that mindset of persistence? Because at times we get discouraged and we feel like, that we're a failure. And at times we feel like we're defeated. So, how do we keep that mindset of persistence?
Well, it's a great question, Stacey. Look, we all have to know our own strengths and weaknesses. Some of us are deeply self-motivated. We'll get up and exercise on a regular basis or write chapters of our books on a daily basis. And we're just self-motivated by that. Others of us in the world are not as self-motivated. And so very often that is a great reason to have a coach that will push you a little bit, or a friend, a business friend that will push you a bit, an accountability partner that will ask you how far you've gotten on a particular project. So you do feel some sense of responsibility about that. And ultimately, you do owe it to yourself to keep pushing forward, because you just never know what is coming around the bend. You never know what's around or just over the next mountaintop. But if you stop, if you don't keep going, you'll never know. And so for me, sometimes a great way of doing that is to find either an individual that, sometimes this is a paid for relationship in terms of somebody who's a coach. And there are all different levels of that. You just have to find somebody that you trust and you really believe has your best self-interest in mind and not just wanting to get paid. But it is of supreme importance that if you truly believe in what you're doing, that you keep going and double check with people that you trust. Is what I'm doing worthwhile? Is my why statement really true? Do I really feel this deeply? And I know that while I may not have gotten to the people who need to hear me right this second, I know that if I keep improving my effort, if I'm not lazy about it, if I stay persistent with what I'm doing, I will start to break through and people will start to hear me. I like to use this as a visual. Everybody can relate to, I think, the video game Breakout, where you're basically returning a ball against the ceiling in the imagery, and each time the ball hits the roof, a brick falls out of the roof. You get closer and closer to breaking through. Well, if you think of your business that way, if you give up after just one brick falls out, you're never going to break through. But if you start thinking in terms of goal oriented, that each individual little goal that you have that's getting you to the finish line, that's literally breaking through the ceiling, is another brick falling out, then just start thinking, how many bricks do I need to fall out before I really break through and I'm really doing something meaningful with my business? So it's really important to have confidence in yourself and what you're doing. And sometimes we do need somebody else who can help us, right? It might not be easy to run an 8-minute mile. That would be really, really goal oriented for me. And I'm somebody who's, I think, in pretty good shape. But I would probably need a coach at this point in my life who could really help me work with my form and help me figure out how to shave meaningful seconds off a mile that I'm running to get me there. And so if that was something that was really important to me, while I'd want to go out and train and be motivated about that, I would need a coach to make me accountable for running faster. Well, in business, it's the same thing. If you need somebody who can help you move what you're doing forward faster, very often a coach is the solution, Stacey.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Glenn, it has been such a pleasure to meeting with you today and you giving out wonderful tips, and I just thank you so much.
Well, I thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity, as I said, to speak to somebody who's a visionary, somebody who really understands a lot of these concepts, had a successful and continues to have a successful career in media and in business development. And so I'm thrilled that you found me, and I'm super thrilled that I got the opportunity to speak with you.
And for more information or to hire Glenn Rudin, go to alwaysbeencreative.com. Again, it's alwaysbeencreative.com. Follow him on Instagram at Glenn, GLENN underscore Rudin, RUDIN underscore message underscore master. And it's been a pleasure.
LinkedIn, you could just find me at
Or
Glenn Rudin.
LinkedIn, yeah.
Yeah.
But this is the interview. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Thank you for watching. Come back next week as I have another guest right here in my world.